As veterans get cut around the league, why are we still waiting on word about David Bakhtiari? Why the longer we have to wait, the greater the chances David Bakhtiari is back. But how'd it work?
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Look, I want to talk about the draft. I want to talk about the corners. I want to talk about the safety market, and we're going to do all of that. But I want to start today with David Bakhtiari, because I started going, well, why have we heard anything? And I kind of half joked yesterday on the show that I felt like the reason is because they're going to Friday news dump it, that he's been cut, and they're just waiting for the right time to do that. And that very well still may be true. But the longer we wait, the reason for waiting starts to come into clearer focus. Now, there is no incentive for the Green Bay Packers to move on from David Bakhtiari any sooner than they have to, because perhaps most importantly, they could still be finding a trade partner or still be negotiating trade compensation. It's probably not going to be a lot, because they've essentially said we want to have a decision made by the new league year, which means if you want to trade him, you want to trade him by the new league year. Now, you could be negotiating with the Jets and say, hey, look, we're going to trade him to you. Let's find a deal that makes sense for both of us. That's going to have to include a new contract, all that stuff. We'll get to the contract part of this in a second. But they may also be negotiating his return to Green Bay. And that is maybe more possible than I think a lot of people have made seem over the course of the last few weeks. And I talked about it a month or so ago. I said, I don't think it's fait accompli that he's just gone. I think it's more likely than not that he won't be back. But what is he going to get? Let's say he's cut. The trade probably comes with a contract extension or some sort of, wink, wink deal that there'll be some sort of contract extension. If he's cut, what is he going to get on the open market? Well, he's not even played a full season's worth of games in the last 3 years. That's problematic, to be sure. But the last time we saw him on the field against Chicago, he was great. And when he was healthy 2 seasons ago, he was really good. A borderline all-pro. And you look at the offensive line play around the league, and it stinks. It stinks. Like, the Chiefs, I would think, would pay him tomorrow. If he was cut tomorrow, he would be a Chief by Friday, and they would say, L'Jarius Sneed, we're out. We got enough guys, but we don't have a left tackle as good as David Bakhtiari. He's going to get more than the money the Packers would save in a pay cut situation in all likelihood. The question is he going to get $20 million? That's the question, because that's the base salary in 2024 on the cap. Now, the money that the Packers owe him, the money that ends up being dead, the 20-some million dollars, that's accounting. That money has been paid. It's over. The only reason it accelerates on the cap now is because it's been restructured, and now here's guaranteed money that has to count. It has to count. And it's not money you can take back. It's already been paid. It is accounting now. So you're just dealing with this $20 million big chunk on the books. Is the team going to give him 20? Maybe with incentives, all that. Or on a multi-year deal, he could bet on, hey, I think I can play 2 or 3 more seasons, and even if they're only offering me $12 or $14 million a year, a potential 3-year deal where I'm making $14 million a year makes sense for me. The problem for the Packers is even cutting that base salary down to like 10 is, number one, it comes with one of two things. He's not just going to cut it to cut it. Because as I said, he's going to get more than 10 million on the open market. He's not just going to cut it to cut it. And if you only cut, let's say 5 from that base, that's money saved. That's real money saved. But it's still going to be $35 million on the cap. He'd have one of the 15 biggest cap hits in the league next year for a guy that you don't even know if he can play. Like physically, can he get on the field? We don't know. That's a pretty tough pill to swallow. So you have to get serious savings in any new contract. Now, what they could do is just say, look, we're going to take this 20 million, we're going to turn it into bonus. We're going to add 3 years or 4 years. We're going to spread the money out now. And rather than eat all this money now, we'll take some cap hit now. That other guaranteed money comes off the books. So he counts. You know, you could take it and make him a $5 million new money hit. And then all of a sudden he's $25 million on the cap. That's real savings. You don't save 20, but you have David Bakhtiari. And then you have to eat the rest in a year. But you do have to pay more money overall, right? Now, the other thing that they could do is just give him an extension. Because in an extension, you can do the same thing with the void years. But instead of creating money that you're going to have to pay out, because that's essentially what void years do. You get to spread the money. It's accounting. It's mob accounting. You get to spread the money out. 5, 5, 5, whatever. And then it all tolls when you move on, when it voids. But for the moment, you get to spread the money out. It's the most ridiculous system ever. And it's very hard to even understand without like visuals and a PowerPoint presentation and an Excel spreadsheet and someone with, a master's in mathematics. It's ridiculous, the system that they've created, but it's the system that they've created. But you could take an extension and say, okay, David, what we're going to do is we're going to give you 2 more years on this deal, but we need you to bring that cap hit way down this year, like 5 million. But then we'll put the rest of the money from that base salary that was going to be in there. So we'll take that 15 and we'll put it in next year's. And so it'll be next year's base salary. Now, the problem for David Bakhtiari in that situation is, unless you're getting new and guaranteed money, you could be potentially taking a $15 million pay cut. Because if you play on this year and then you move all the base salary into the future, guess what? If you're hurt again this year, you get cut and you don't ever see that money. That's the only way it would make sense to do on an extension. But what the Packers could do, and I think the further down the road we get, the more likely it is that the Packers are negotiating with David Bakhtiari, because in order to add void years to a contract, you have to negotiate that. Is he still gets all of his money. He still gets all the money because you convert it to bonus. So he gets just get paid $20 million. No one else is going to give him $20 million this year, in all likelihood. I think you could get to 20 in incentives. Like if he goes to a place that has, a little bit of cap strapped or whatever, or they do what the Packers could do in this exact circumstance and say, what we're going to do is we're going to give you this money. We're going to give you $23 million guaranteed, but it's going to be on a 1-year deal with voids. That's fine for David Bakhtiari because he's going to get it. He's going to get that money. So This is why I think the more likely outcome is that he's not on the team, because it's just, for the Packers, in order to make it work for them, to make sense for them, to give up the $20 million in savings that you're getting, the number that he'd have to play on this year is so low as to almost just not be in his best interest to take, because he can believe on the open market he could get more. But maybe he wants to be in Green Bay. And like I said, the longer this goes, the more likely it is that they are waiting until the last possible second to negotiate with him and say, let's try and find some common ground here. Because having David Bakhtiari on your team is better than not having him, right? But there's all of these mechanisms and complicated accounting nonsense that leads us to this point. And is it the sexiest topic that I could have led with in terms of the mechanics of it? No. But I think in terms of understanding what he is able to do here and what the Packers have to do in this moment and what could be taking so long, I think it's an important discussion to have. I want to talk about two other important things here. I want to talk about the safety market, because it stinks for safeties, but it is great for teams. We're going to talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Packers. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it to its peak. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that dub. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Buying tickets should not be a pain in the neck. You should be excited to go. You should be so stoked to be going, oh man, I can't wait to buy tickets to my favorite band or my favorite team. Game Time makes it easy. Easy to find and buy tickets with just a couple clicks, views from your seats, and the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection even. Plus, all-in prices show you your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the code LOCKEDON, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets. The lowest price guaranteed. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Everyone needs a safety. A lot of teams need two safeties. The Seahawks just cut both of their starting safeties. The Bills cut Jordan Poyer. Micah Hyde is a free agent. They're going to have two entirely new safeties. The Packers are probably going to have two entirely new starting safeties. And if you look at the market, and we've talked about the names, there is a ton of them. You're going, well, all these guys are like solid players. Why does no one want to pay them? And the NFL has spoken loud and clear on this. They just don't value the position. Now, whether they're right or wrong to believe that, they just don't. Mike McDonald went from Baltimore, where he had one of the best safety duos in the league, Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton, with Geno Stone as the other guy. Marcus Williams gets hurt, and he steps in and is just like awesome. and he goes to Seattle, where you have Quandre Diggs, who's a solid player, didn't play his best football last year, but it's a really solid player over the last couple of years. And Jamal Adams, for all his flaws, there's a way to use a guy like that. I wouldn't want it, but you could. And they're just like, nah, we're good. I mean, I know the Bills are in salary cap hell, but they're competing for a championship. Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde are good players. They are probably better than the guys that they're going to be able to sign, even in a depressed market, because of supply. This happens every year. The supply outstrips demand almost every offseason. And you get top of market deals still. Marcus Williams got a top of market deal. Tyrann Mathieu, when he went to Kansas City, got a top of market deal. These things still do exist for the absolute top players. But even a top of market safety deal is nothing. There are 6 safeties who make more than $15 million, more than $15 million. There are 6 safeties that make more than $15 a year. And one of them is Antoine Winfield Jr. He only makes that because he just got tagged. No safeties make $20 million or more a year. There are 15 receivers who make $20 million a year. 15. Half the league has a receiver making more money than any safety in football. In fact, only 13 safeties, less than half the league, make at least $10 million. $10 million is what you give to, like, Andre Dillard got $10 million, $9.6 million in free agency last year. He doesn't even have a season's worth of starts in his career, and the Titans gave him $10 million a year. That's the safety market. It is nothing. And there are 15 guys right now, the guys who could, for half the teams in the league, just walk in and be a no-doubt starter for them. That's where the safety play is. It's also a position where, like linebacker, it only really, really matters in 2 cases. If you have a bad player or you have a really, really good player. And there are like 4 of them. And so one of the places that the league is actually pretty smart about this is at safety, where they go, why are we paying middle-class safeties? Why would you pay a fine safety $15 million? Even though the safety play you're getting is kind of bad. Like the Packers last year went in with money to spend and were like, Jonathan Owens for $1 million or $2 million. Tarvarius Moore for $1 million or $2 million. Run it back with Rudy Ford, and we'll eat the money on Darnell Savage. It's fine. Okay? The league just doesn't think the position is that valuable unless you have a true difference maker, unless you are Derwin James, unless you are Antoine Winfield Jr., unless you are Minkah Fitzpatrick. And like, how much longer is the list? Kyle Hamilton, really, 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 really good. But this is good for the Packers because they could get 2 guys relatively inexpensively. They could get a top-ish market deal in terms of like the most expensive player in free agency and still have enough money to sign another quality safety. You can probably sign someone who could come in for you tomorrow and start for $3 million, $4 million, because the league just doesn't care. And then there's probably going to be another 5 or 6 guys who shake available after the draft, and another 5 or 6 guys who shake available after June 1st, and another 5 or 6 guys who become available in June, July, August. It's why I don't understand why the Packers have just kind of thrown away the position, because there's always quality players for cheap, and they chose to do like the barest of minimums last year. And they actually got decent play out of Darnell Savage and decent play out of Rudy Ford. I don't know why they were so adamant about playing Jonathan Owens. I thought Ford was playing fine at times. Not a great player. I'd be interested in giving him a shot to come back in this defense. Although I continue to believe Keyshawn Nixon is a safety in this defense, and I want to see it. I want him to tweet about it. I want someone to tell us that that's what's happening. Maybe we wait for the draft and they take a couple corners and they go, yeah, actually Key's playing at safety. Or maybe they announce the deal and we hear this is actually the plan. There's so many opportunities to go out and get good players because the market just says, we don't want them. This is a simple economics thing. There's a much bigger demand or a much bigger supply than there is demand. And so you get all of these cheap deals for these players. I mean, it is crazy that every year we sit here. I mean, anyone that's been listening to this show for the last couple of years is like, every June and July, I'm going, why is this guy still out there and why haven't you signed him? Like Juan Thornhill goes to the Browns for $7 million. That's a really nice player. Jimmy Ward goes to the Texans for $6.5 million per year. That's a really good deal. Those guys are good. Those guys were really good for their teams. And you go down the list. And what's crazy is almost none of these guys are playing on second contracts. Even the guys making like $5-6 million, they're on rookie deals. It's Kyle Hamilton making $4 million a year. I mean, no one is making real money in this market right now. $13 guys making $10 million or more. 13. And only 14 are making 7.5 or more. Well, let's call it 8. 8 or more. Less than half of the league of safeties is making $8 or more million. $8 million. Backup quarterbacks cost more money. Swing tackles cost more money. Mediocre, like aggressively mediocre starting corners cost more money. The Packers are in a really good position to, if they want to, get some really good players for cheap. I want to post-combine it and talk about the corners to figure out where we are heading into the pro day circuit, because there are a couple players whose pro days are going to matter. We're going to talk about that in just a second on Locked On Packers. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on a 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to an IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees do apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV apps, the Fire TV channels. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, we have a lot of the testing numbers for these corners. I have watched about 15, 16 of them. I've watched all the guys who are projected at this moment to be top 100 picks, so guys who could go in the first 3 rounds. There are 13 of them I like, okay, in the first 3 rounds. Quinny Mitchell from Toledo, Cooper DeJean from Iowa, Nate Wiggins from Clemson, Terrion Arnold from Alabama, Kool-Aid McKinstry also from Alabama, TJ Tampa Jr. from Iowa State, Ennis Rakestraw Jr. from Missouri, Kamari Lassiter from Georgia, Kyrie Jackson from Oregon, Max Melton from Rutgers, Kalen Bullock, USC. He played safety at USC. I think he's a corner in the NFL. Mike Sainristil from Michigan, and Cam Hart from Notre Dame. So, who is actually in play for the Packers? Well, Quinton Mitchell and Terry Arnold probably going to be off the board. Rakestraw did not test well, but was apparently hurt. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt on that. I really liked him as a player. If he goes out and runs fast and jumps high and shows good agilities at his pro day, I'm willing to say he's back in the mix. He was light and still ran slow. That is concerning. If he's 5'10 and change, 186, 185, 182, that's going to be tough. But we've had these conversations about like nickels, like what are they going to change their standards for corners for a nickel? I think if you're going to use a first round pick on a guy, you'd like him to be more than a nickel, and that's the problem here. The only way you'd take Rakestraw is if he was big and did the thing that like Marshawn Lloyd did, the USC running back, and that is you add 10 pounds and still run 4.4, which seems pretty unlikely at this point. And we don't know how much Wiggins coming in at 173 affects his stock with the Packers, but probably a lot. Probably a lot. Someone was like, well, he can just add. He can just add from 173. The Packers want their corners to be 190. 17 pounds. 17 pounds. I understand he's 6 feet tall, but like 17 pounds is 10% of his body weight. He's going to put on 10%, 17 pounds of really good weight. When? In 5 years? I think he's just off the board. I really do. Like a second round, like if he's at 58, you do the Josh Jackson thing. You just say, okay, take him. Like the value is just too good. The tape is too good. If he can get to 180, 182, okay, great. And then we don't, same kind of deal with Sainristil, although he tested like a premium athlete and he's shorter. So he's denser. So maybe you can make the case like at 5'9", 182, that makes more sense. Plus he's a day 2 guy anyway. I don't know. We may never know. Unless the Packers take him, we may never know if he was actually in play for them. But so that leaves this group to me. And I'm going to tier them. Cooper is the guy in the first round. That's the guy that I have my eye on. If they can get him, I think they're going to try and get him. If TJ Tampa or Kool-Aid McKinstry go at their pro days and run well, perform well, they could become options here as well. Kool-Aid came in smaller than we thought, in that like 5'11 plus range as opposed to 6'1, which is his listed weight. But if he goes out and runs 4.4s, I think he's in play. TJ Tampa, same thing. He's a legit 6'2", 6'3". If he goes out and runs 4.4s, he is a potential first-round player. But they're, I think, that tier below. They're late first, early second kinds of players. Kamari Lassiter, only 186, but tested incredibly well, really good 3-cone. We're talking about a premium athlete at Georgia. The Packers love that stuff. Can play man, can play zone. I think he's in play for sure at 41. Kyrie Jackson from Oregon, also in this tier in the second round, where I really like him. Huge, tested really well. That's one of my guys coming out of Indy. Next is Max Melton. That's late second. That's like 58. Wouldn't surprise me. He showed up. I think he was 46th in Field Yates's top 50. Like a legit round 2 kind of grade from Field Yates. So 58 might be too late. But I really like Max Melton. Can play outside, can play in the slot. Is the perfect kind of Packer. And then that next tier, that third round group for me is Kalen Bullock. The ball production is incredible. You want someone that can take the ball away. If you're Jeff Hafley, maybe you're looking at that going, look, he's 6'3". He's got corner skills, can play safety. Maybe you try him in the slot. You probably need your slot to tackle. He does not give good effort on tackling. Just doesn't. And then Cam Hart is my round 3 sleeper. Notre Dame, big, physical, can play man coverage, just doesn't find the ball. That's the problem. But in the third round, maybe if you're Jeff Hafley, you go, I can coach this guy. I can teach him to play this better? Maybe. So that's where we are right now. We're waiting. Kool-Aid and TJ Tampa, those guys are guys who could sneak into that first round range if they test well, because they're borderline now. Cooper DeJean is that round 1 target that I think is not only going to be there, or it has a chance to be there, but the Packers would certainly have interest in. But look, these guys that don't work out at Indy, that raises their risk a little. And so it could push him down right into that nice 25 Green Bay range. All right, back tomorrow. Much more here on Locked On Packers. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on the X Machine, on Instagram, on TikTok. Locked On Packers is the handle. And go subscribe on YouTube so you can stay Locked On Packers.